Hello, welcome back. I'm the Erroneous Kaiser. I'll be talking about two new additions that have made it into my comic book collection. Here we have Vault of Horror number 28 from EC Comics, and of course another EC Comics from the same series. This is Vault of Horror number 30. I'll talk about each story and any possible ties that they have to influences or modern day TV series, movies, and that kind of thing. Alright, first up, we've got Vault of Horror number 28. The cover art here is done by Johnny Craig. It's got this voodoo vibe to it. The zombie ghost sacrifice in there really has a big effect visually on the cover. And like almost all of these EC horror comics, we have our three hosts there on the side as well. We got the Vault Keeper, who is the main host of the Vault of Horror, the Old Witch, who is the main host of Haunt of Fear, and the Crypt Keeper, who is the main host of Tales from the Crypt. The first story goes along with the art from the cover. The name of this story is Till Death. The artist for the cover I mentioned was Johnny Craig. He is also the writer and the inking and penciling for the art in here. The colorist is the all-powerful Marie Severin. If you haven't known before, I've talked about her a little bit in previous videos. She was from EC Horror on into the Marvel Age and beyond in the Bronze, Copper. She was there the entire time, mostly in the beginning doing these horror titles, but then she did a lot of work, a lot of stuff for Marvel later on. She really didn't get the credit she deserved when she was alive, I don't think. I really like seeing her name when it comes up and stuff. The host for the first story is the Vault Keeper. We get a little blip in the beginning, a little setup for the story. Has not aged well, but here we have the plantation owner who brings his newlywed wife to the plantation. They are crazy in love, and unfortunately she dies very soon after arriving at the plantation. It was too much for her. I guess the climate is really different and there's a lot of sicknesses and dangers. She didn't get all her shots, okay? She didn't get vaccinated, and we see the repercussions of that. The quote-unquote servants of the plantation do some voodoo to bring her back, and she is back for his life, for the husband's life. Very soon after that, he starts seeing there's something not right about the whole situation. He's very happy at first, but she starts to stink, and at one point he can't take it at all. He does try to get rid of her, but in the process he himself ends up dying, and the servants bring him back as well as another zombie, and so they are together to the end as zombie lovers. That's the whole story there. There are a few ties that this story had with more modern TV series. I don't know if you would call the 1990s HBO Tales from the Crypt TV series modern.
Tales from the Crypt.
But for me it is. I don't know. I'm 40 years old, so your definition of modern might be a little bit different. In season 2, episode 4 of Tales from the Crypt, there was a title called Till Death. Same title. They took the main part of the story. A plantation owner gets married, and his wife is brought back. That's kind of where the similarities stop. In this Tales from the Crypt episode, though, the main motivation for this guy to get married is he wants this woman's money. I just went through a big explanation. I don't know if I'll put that in the video. Simple explanation. A greedy dude gets some voodoo magic to make a girl be with him for life. He abuses that magic potion and ends up with a zombie bride who gets him in the end. So his greed is repaid with his own suffering by the end. Previous stories have come up with similar, I guess, themes in Johnny Craig's art and script writing. Maybe the dude just liked the idea of zombie brides coming back from the dead, but you can see the similarities in the art. I'm not saying that the dude's plagiarizing himself or that it's a bad thing. I just thought it was interesting going through EC Comics and seeing a kind of these similar themes that Johnny Craig had for himself. I guess he was just really in tune with those ideas, right? Our second story, we've got art by Jack Davis. We've got the script by both Bill Gaines and Al Feldstein. We've got a host in the Crypt Keeper here. Yeah, Jack Davis is usually the dude that does the Crypt Keeper. Story here is we've got 3 partners of a sawmill who get a government contract to make these small discs. It's not really explained what they are until the end. At first, they're very excited. They're like, oh man, this is going to be really great for us. And then 2 of them, they kind of go over the numbers after taxes and costs for supplies and this kind of stuff. They see that their profit, it really isn't that big, after taxes and stuff. So they decide to cut one guy out of the equation. So yeah, they do away with him, and then at his funeral, one guy was like, "Oh man," that he, pretty much says out loud what they did within distance of this guy's grave, so the dead dude can hear it. I guess he comes back, and then those dudes are found the next morning, sliced wafer thin, just like the objects they were supposed to make for the government. And then it was explained the discs were used as UFOs for the government to, trick the citizens or something like that. They just threw that in the end there. Just a little bit of seasoning right at the end. So, simple story. This story right here was just kind of one and done, and no real ties to anything else. Story number 3 actually is a text story written by Bill Gaines. We got a dude in faraway land he comes upon, and they go out of the way to say that it's a Muslim shopkeeper. They got a little street stall there. This guy, he wants this pendant around the shopkeeper's neck, and there's some writing on it he can't read. So he really wants this pendant. Shopkeeper declines, so he knows the dude's Muslim. He comes back with a pig, cuts the pig open, grabs the pendant, shoves it in the pig. And then he's like, do you want it now? And he walks out of there with it. The next day, they find this guy cut open with a pig inside him. Writing on the back said something like, if the owner of this pendant is defiled or the pendant is defiled, defile that person in the same exact way. Something like that. Next, we got a letters column, Vault Keeper's Corner. The main takeaway from this is at the end, from the editors, they said a little note, hey, check it out. We just reached a deal with Ray Bradbury. We're going to be doing some of his stories. First one to be in Haunt of Fear number 16. They had already adapted some of Ray Bradbury's stories in their comics, and then there was a note was sent to them, hey, you're adapting my stuff and I'm not getting paid. And so they came to a deal with Ray Bradbury to pay him for then adapting his stuff into their comics. So there were some unofficial ones before that, but the first official Ray Bradbury story to be included in the EC Comics was Haunt of Fear number 16. Next story is For How the Bell Tolls. The script was written by Bill Gaines on this one. We got the art by George Evans. Now, George Evans is another guy who contributed, he's a regular contributor to EC Comics. It really wasn't his favorite thing to do, I don't think, to do horror comics. He is known mostly for all of his war comics, especially comics having to do with aviation. He really liked planes. He liked drawing planes. And even to the end of his life, he was contributing to books, art, and his studies about World War I aviation, World War II aviation, that kind of thing. He was really big into that. But here we have him doing some of the horror stuff for EC. And actually, in one of the panels in this comic, he's included a portrait of himself in the background. Back to the story, we are hosted here by the Vault Keeper. So in this story here, we have the Queen's birthday is coming. And of course, they're going to ring the bell really hard. And we've got the bell ringer and the bell ringer's apprentice. The apprentice has been the apprentice for 34 years now. And he's getting really agitated. He hasn't rang the bell once in 34 years. He really wants to ring that bell. So he kind of goes a little overboard here. And he's like, let me ring that freaking bell. And the bell ringer's like, man, when I'm gone, then you're going to ring the bell all you want. He's like, but it's the Queen's birthday. I want to ring the bell today. The apprentice kills the bell ringer. They find out about this before he can get to ring the bell for the queen's birthday. So the king takes this dude and he's like, "Nah, you're out of here. No way you're ringing the bell on the queen's birthday after this horrible crime. Totally disgusting. No way. Of course, the bells are still rung, but what do you call the little dangle in the bell? The little dingle dongle. They put the dude in the bell. Yeah, it's just the sound of him smacking against the bell until it's just a splosh or just like a splat. And that's how they celebrated the bell ring on the queen's birthday. That brings us to our final story. We Ain't Got Nobody. This is a script done by Bill Gaines and Al Feldstein, and the art done by Ghastly. Posted by The Witch in our intro here, we are at first confronted with this man's crime, right? We have a zombie, some dude back from the grave. We get a flashback to a train trip that these guys took. This one person was named beneficiary for his friend, and these three dudes are talking while that guy's out of the room. They're like, "Oh man, that means if he dies with a double indemnity." I had no clue what that meant when I was reading this, but they explained that they'll get $40,000 if this guy bites it, right? So they bring him to the next car, and in between the two cars, there's no barriers or anything there. They throw him into the train, and well, he's killed, right? They find his torso. But they could never find his head and hands. But the guys go on, so they just bury the torso, right? These guys go about their life, but then one by one, we have some strange occurrences happening. Some people see looks like mannequins moving in stores, and one by one, these dudes they're dropping dead. Somebody's killing these guys. We got to our final man, and he of course is also taken out. And then the scene, when the police get there, they just see a mannequin without a head, hands, or feet. So we see the head, hands, and feet make their way back to the grave so that they can be reunited with the torso. See, and rest peacefully. All right, that's all for Vault of Horror 28. Let's move on to number 30. Vault of Horror 30 was published in 1953. The cover here is done by Johnny Craig. This is a pretty iconic one for EC Comics. This is one of the heavy hitters, I guess. Not the top, but it's still up there in some of the more expensive ones. We'll get to the story that ties into the cover a little later. It's not the first one. Our first story is called The Split Personality. Script, pencils, inks, done by Johnny Craig. The colorist for the whole book, again, is Marie Severin. Story goes, we got this con man. There's this one house he knows there's this rich couple, and he wants to get into. Just by chance, he's able to save their cat. They're twins, and he's invited in. He becomes friends with them. He knows they've got a fortune, and so he comes up with this plan to marry both of them so he can get the entire fortune, both halves of that, right? So he creates this alter identity for himself. He tells them, he has a twin as well. He's got some work in South Africa, and every month they switch. So their work requires one of them to be in South Africa the whole time. So he poses as his own twin, and then he's with the other. So he marries both of them, and he says he's going to South Africa, but then he just spends a week by himself or a few days by himself, and then comes back to their house, and then switches twins, right? So he has to make sure he has a suntan when he comes back from South Africa. So he's tanning one day, and a strap from his, I guess, house cloak goes over his back and leaves a white strip on his back. One of the twins notices right before he was supposed to go to South Africa. And she's like, oh, on your back. And he's like, yeah, I know. I got a little too sunburned. And then he cuts her off and then he leaves, right? The next day, the twins are talking about how much they love their partner. One girl's like, oh, it's so funny. He had this white strip on his back. And the other girl's like, oh, that's so funny because they're so similar because the other one also had, oh, wait. And they're like, oh, my God, he made us bigamists. And I had to look that up. That's when one person is married to two people and they don't know or something. Different than polygamy, I guess. So they decide to chop him in half so they could each have half. This also has an episode from Tales from the Crypt.
Tales from the Crypt.
That had almost the same exact story. The other one, they changed some things. This one, not so much. This one happened in season 4, episode 11. It was also called
Split Personality.
The con man is actually Joe Pesci.
Say it's true, say it do, Katerina.
And what he does to differentiate between himself and his twin brother is he ties a ponytail he clips a ponytail to the back of his head, and he like has an earring or something.
Whoa, ladies. Pip told me you were a couple of radical babes, but I must confess to being totally stoked and overwhelmed. You dig?
And like that. And it's pretty funny, though. His two personalities are pretty funny. I mean, a lot of the Tales from the Crypt episodes were funny in a certain way. Actually, the way he's found out is the same way in the show and in the comic. And his end is the exact same as well. Except in the one twist here was the girls in the series, or in this one episode, they actually killed their father because they were too jealous of each other. They didn't want to share him, so they ended up killing him and sharing his remains, I guess, which is exactly what they did to the Joe Pesci character in the Tales from the Crypt episode as well. Second story is hosted by the Crypt Keeper, which means we've got Jack Davis doing the art. Scripts by Bill Gaines and Al Feldstein again. This one's called Who Donut. Here we got a bunch of murder victims that all appear with donut-shaped wounds on their bodies. I don't know why I think it was just for the pun in the title that they had to say it was donut-shaped. We got a reporter that's going hard on the cops, telling them they're not doing their jobs. We got a serial killer here. So we got the reporter goes back to his office, and this young, beautiful lady needs a ride home. He gives her a ride, but he is like 3/4 of the way to forcing himself on her. She's like, get off, you guys are all hands, blah, blah, blah. He relents. Turns out that girl is the next victim the next day. Then the police go after the journalist, right? He's like, nah, it wasn't. He could prove that he wasn't the one who did it. And then so he decides to go down by the docks because the only clue that the police have is it smells like dock workers, smells like brine or something like that. The one survivor said that it smelled really bad like brine. It was when she was able to escape, the killer was holding her arms and put the hand over her mouth. So this journalist goes down to the docks and he sees who he thinks the killer is. The killer creeps into the aquarium and he finds out it's an octopus. So then the octopus then kills him, and the donut-shaped marks are the suction cups. And he figures out just a little too late. He made the connection. The girl said, "Oh, you guys are all hands," and then the survivor said she had both of her hands held, but the creature was able to still put a hand over her mouth, and he's like, "Oh wait, that's too many hands." He finds out too late, and it's funny that his assault on that girl was put into the story just so he could remember her saying, "You guys are all hands." Which I think is something that just doesn't age too well, even as far as a way of storytelling. All right, we have just a straight text story. It's called Refuge. I can say in one sentence: a jewel thief hides in the water, and there are piranhas in there. Boom, the end, okay? We come on the letters column. Nothing really too interesting here. Our next story is called Practical Choke. The Vault Keeper as a host once more. Script by Bill Gaines and Al Feldstein, and art once again is by George Evans. This is the story that is tied into the cover here. I'll tell the story. You'll get where it connects. So a bunch of med students, they just cut up a cadaver and start leaving body parts in different places. They think it's so hilarious, right? They're like, half of the story is just them laughing their butts off. In the end, one of the cadaver's intestines is reanimated of its own volition in revenge, I guess, and ties them up and suffocates them with intestines. They're found in the morgue, I guess, just dead, wrapped in intestines, suffocated, strangled. I guess that's a pretty short telling of the story. Even for the sensational cover, you'd think there had been a better story, I guess. The one thing, a little factoid here, there are likenesses of Al Feldstein and Bill Gaines in here that George Evans put in. In our previous George Evans story, he put himself in a picture in the background, a portrait, and here the two of the dudes who are, putting these body parts all over town, they are likenesses of Al Feldstein and Bill Gaines. And our final story is titled Notes to You, hosted by The Witch. Script by Bill and Al, and art by Ghastly. A few instances of an anonymous letter coming to somebody, resulting in somebody killing themselves. The first one, a husband receives an anonymous letter, his wife's cheating, he confronts her, she goes and kills herself, but then it's proven that she was not cheating. A banker fires a guy because he got an anonymous letter, that guy is now ruined, so he kills himself. But then we find out that he was actually doing nothing wrong. And then we go to a candy shop owner. The cops get an anonymous letter, he's using rotten food or rotten products. That's of course not true. And they're trying to figure out who it was, except on the letter that they had gotten from the candy shop owner, the ink disappears. And then the cops are like, what's this? And the candy shop owner is like, I sold some ink to a really grumpy dude. I thought it'd be a funny prank to sell him invisible ink. So they find out who has been sending these anonymous letters and having a lot of damage on the community. So then the people who got these letters, they're like, this guy has been lying. So they get him, and then they fill him with lie. All right, and the whole story is just a setup for a pun. And of course, he dies and rots away. He lied, so they put lie in him. He dies. All right, and that brings us to the end of number 30. Hope you enjoyed this little deeper look into two of the new EC Golden Age horror comics that have made it into my collection. I had a lot of fun reading them, of course, and researching the little bits of extra information. That was really fun. If you liked it, sure, give a thumbs up and subscribe. And hopefully I'll be coming back with some more videos in a similar vein pretty soon. I do have a few new comics in my collection I do want to talk about. So until then, I'm the Erroneous Kaiser. See you next time.